Hey, friends and family, welcome back to Starkey Formstead. So, my name is Samantha, and oh my gosh, I could not wait to share this with you guys. So, don't forget, today is August 15th. It is Friday. We will be Zooming tonight at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. For all of you that row in that proverbial boat with Stephen and I. So, please make sure you've checked your emails and even spam so that we can get you in that Zoom with us. We have so much interesting information to share with you guys tonight, especially your new state leaders and helping you guys get broke up into individual Zoom groups. So this is us taking back territory. I want to share my new shirt with you. Heaven is my home, and it's so cute because at the bottom it says, "I'm just here recruiting." Love it. So fits my personality, right? So thank you, Miss Patricia. I love my shirt. Excuse me. There's something in the air around here lately. Okay, guys. So, what did I find for you this time? First, I want to talk to you about why don't we know this? If I ask you this question, I would like to know what your answer is. If you're Muslim, what was your family? What was your heritage before your family became Muslim? Like, what were they before your family became Muslim? Chances are they were one of three things. They had to have been, right? Christian, Jewish, or polytheistic, or what we like to call is basically they just, the occult, basically, right? Like they had to have been one of those three things. And I'm going to share some information I found. I really do hope you guys hang around for this. So I'm going to tell you right now, when I found this out, oh my gosh, was I so excited because for one, I think this really kind of opens up like what is going on in Israel. I am at this point so sick of hearing people say that Israel needs to give its land up to Gaza, give Gazans back their land. It's not their land. And if you're a Christian or even somebody with a modicum of brain cells, you're going to listen to this video. This was written October 8th of 2014. Muslim heritage before Muhammad. Okay. So if you were born, what were you before Muhammad? How did you become a Muslim? Was it by choice or was it by coercion? Was it to live or to die for your belief? What did your ancestors believe? No matter how much the scholars of Islam try, there was no Allah before Muhammad. In other words, Muhammad created this religion. Okay, a man in the desert who had an encounter with a demon, a demonic angel, a fallen angel, created Islam. Okay. It goes on to say that it says there was God, and to the extent Allah is the name of God linguistically, then Allah is the biblical God. Okay. But that's not true, and I'm going to point it out. The Quran's Allah is not God, as God is not a deceiver, but a truth teller. God is not one to fight for those who do not believe, but to love them and pray constantly that they come to understand the good news, the saving grace of Christ. God is not a proponent of hate. Too many people have gotten down the watered version, the westernized, the bastardized version of what it is to be Muslim. Okay. Culture is important to all of us, Christians, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists, and Muslims, among many other things. Many look to their families and what they believe, embracing the faith structure they inherited. But when research is conducted into one's ancestry, it often reveals some of the most interesting facts. Okay. So it just goes on to say down here, and it gives you a little understanding, because this is where people get so confused. What is the oldest single God religion in the world? Type it in comments if you know, because I'm fixing to tell you. It might shock you. What today is Saudi Arabia is an area that prior to Muhammad was uncivilized. Tribes, if there was any form of government or authority, existed with chiefs whose character became the guide. Relying on the morality of the chief, found many bands of brothers as women had no status, and they still do not in the Middle East. War kept them from being bored in a life without meaning, direction, or purpose. So everything was about plunder and theft and taking each other's territory. There was no desire for peace because that would be no fun. Education was not pursued, but there existed oral tradition relayed through poetry. To the north, in areas that today are Jordan and Syria, there were Christians. To the south, Yemen, there were Christians who were influenced by Christian Ethiopians from the west across the Red Sea. Jews, by this point, had been vanquished by the Romans that escaped Israel after the conquest and destruction of the temple that was 70 CE, had migrated into Medina and became economic leaders. They were farmers, industrialists. Arabs and Jews practiced usury mainly to finance goods carried by caravans from Syria to Yemen. The Arabs maintained a slave trade. They always did. They still do. Those that loved their possessions were the atheists, materialistics. The Sabines worshiped the stars. Many were idol worships and polytheists, and certainly Jews and Christians. Now, go down. With Muhammad came a change, unexpected, some to refer to him as the emancipator. He provided structure and purpose to those who then became followers, okay? Muhammad formed his own tribe, the Muhammadans, or Islamists, whose members today refer to them as Muslim. What started as a peaceful and tolerant approach to bringing as many as possible into his fold, as he aged and progressed, he became impatient, more militant, and less of a disciple for what he believed and more of a conqueror, converting by force. He practiced terrorism as we see it today, engaged by Islamists such as ISIS or ISIL, Al-Qaeda, the Muslim Brotherhood, and of course, Hamas. As a warrior general and accomplished trader, he was more effective at spreading his philosophy, as were his successors, than Christians. After his death, Islam developed rapidly through military incursions and conquest. And then when you look at this map, right, it says here the dark blue was at the death of Muhammad in 632, right here. This light blue, which is Persia, Armenia, Syria, and Egypt, was after the four caliphs in 1661. And then these green areas was after the conquest of the Umayyad caliphs in 1750. All right. Muslims came from religious groups that today Islamists continue to attempt to destroy or convert. Of the billion plus Muslims, if they research their heritage, Yemen, Alexandria, Spain, Armenia, Mesopotamia, Persia, Turkey, Ethiopia, Algeria, or Morocco, even the Middle East, the Peninsula, Asia Minor, Turkey, Africa, and southern parts of Russia, they will realize, too, that they are descendants of anything but Islam. They were once free people. Even those from the Arabian Peninsula have a history of being Jew, Christians, Zoroastrians, or atheists. So I wanted to show you guys that, right? It's so important. So important. And then when you hear about women's freedom, certainly Muhammad made life better for women. Really? They were as animals with a human use to procreate. But too many girl babies, and the next one would be buried alive. There was no inheritance. He gave them status limited by modern standards. It was a start. He gave them a voice limited also. They were to be protected like cattle, possessions, never free. They were owned. They had some rights, some inheritance. They could be enslaved. The non-Muslims still remained as only a serving purpose, not required to be covered, half naked, even marked, tattooed, to be used and abused. Remember this. Non-Muslims still remained as only serving a purpose, not to required to be covered. They could be kept half naked, tattooed, used, and abused. And then they castrated young men, non-Muslims, removing not just their testicles, but also this part, to be trained as guardians for the women that they kept in their harems. So I want you to understand that before the 7th century, 700 years after Jesus died, is when the Muslim religion came on the scene. So let's see what Ben Shapiro says. This is very interesting. So what made me do the research I just showed you?
Muslim territory. This is a pure and absolute lie. Israel is historically Jewish territory. According to the Bible and certain interpretations of contemporaneous archaeology, Joshua entered the land of Israel in 1400 BC. The Kingdom of David was founded around 1000 BC. The first Temple of Solomon was built in approximately 957 BC. The Second Temple was built in approximately 515 BC. The Hasmonean dynasty was founded in 166 BC. Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 BC, and the Jews exiled from Israel in 136 CE after the defeat of the Bar Kokhba revolt. The Romans, in an attempt to shame the Jews, renamed the area Palestine as an insult after the Jews' historic enemy, the Philistines.
As an insult. I have said on this channel many, many times, I get very frustrated when I hear people want to start talking about the Middle East. You're living in America, for the love of God. You have very little biblical history under your belt or any understanding of the covenant promise that Jehovah made with the Jewish people. So if you're a Christian and you are rooting for the removal of the Jews from Israel, if you are okay with even 1 inch of that land being taken from the Israeli people, then you don't know the God that you serve. I'm not sure which God you serve. That's not my business. But it is not Jehovah Jireh.
Even during the exile, there was continuous Jewish presence in the land. Islam, which is the religion of the Palestinian Arabs, was not even founded until the 7th century CE or AD. No independent Arab state has ever existed in the area known as Palestine. Myth number 2. Israel is the cause of the failure of land partition in the Middle East.
Okay, so I just thought that was super, 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 super interesting. I'll link all this. You can go watch it. I want to show you one more. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I think it's important that you guys hear both sides, right? I've looked at everybody's information, and I'm so tired of the fact that people don't know their Bible. You need to learn your Bible.
This is, again, a lie. Israel's founding documents asked Arabs to stay. Israel's Declaration of Independence, in the middle of an ongoing war with Arab nations, reads, quote, "We appeal, in the very midst of the onslaught launched against us now for months, to the Arab inhabitants of the State of Israel to preserve peace and participate in the upbuilding of the state on the basis of full and equal citizenship and due representation in all its provisional and permanent institutions." Debate has raged for decades over how many Arabs left the nascent State of Israel thanks to expulsion, and how many left because they were told to leave by their own leaders. An estimated 250,000 to 300,000 refugees left before their homes were even in a war zone.
We didn't compel them to leave. They left on their own will, or rather on the will of the Arab leaders, who advised them even before trouble started.
The collapse of Arab society during the 1947-48 war, leaving many Arabs without a means of support, has been well documented.
Israel will do everything in its power to help the resettlement of these refugees by paying compensation and by other means.
Hundreds of thousands of these refugees ended up in the West Bank and Gaza, which remained Arab territory until 1967. Furthermore, Arab nations refused to take in hundreds of thousands of Arabs, turning their co-religionists into refugees who have maintained that status for literally decades, a situation unparalleled in human history. Fully 62% of such refugees live outside the West Bank and Gaza Strip, according to the UN RWA. Meanwhile, Israel, tiny Israel took in over 800,000 Jews expelled from Arab lands between 1948 and 1951 and never asked for land to be returned to those Jews. Myth number 4, Israel is an apartheid state. Israel is most certainly not an apartheid state. Arab citizens of Israel have the same rights as Jewish citizens. 20% of all citizens of Israel are Arab. The vast majority of Palestinians live under Palestinian rule in the West Bank. All Arabs in the Gaza Strip lived under Hamas rule. Israel's population, again, is 20% Arab. Arab parties have sat in the Israeli government, and Arab sits on Israel's Supreme Court. There are 0 Jews living under Palestinian rule. The only apartheid state is any state of Palestine. All of these myths have consequences. All of these lies have consequences. They lead to a pseudo-sophisticated context that allows for the murder of Jews. It allows people in the West to believe that the grievances that are openly articulated by the Palestinian Authority, Islamic Jihad, and Hamas are actually about territory. Hamas openly calls for the murder of every Jew in the region. The Palestinian Authority gives actual bounties to the families of terrorists. Islamic Jihad has the same exact goals as Hamas. When evil people say they want to wipe Jews off the face of the earth, we ought to listen, not make up silly excuses as to why they don't actually mean what they say.
I agree. People mean exactly what they say. And this is why, and this is what gets me, is you're not asking the right questions. I said this from day one. Why is anybody starving in Gaza when more food has been brought into the Gaza Strip in 2 years than they had before the war? Why would anybody be starving? What's happening to the food? Y'all don't ask because you don't want to know. As a child of God, you have to look at things for what they actually are. The Bible tells me that that land belongs to the Jews. So foreign policy aside, personal opinion aside, I have to look at what the Bible tells me first. Then the second thing I have to look at is, why do people believe that it's Israel starving Palestinian children? Why aren't you asking where all the food went that is obviously going in there? Who has it? Why won't they get it? Right? Just like you believe that only AIPAC should be shut down. Let's not talk about the $99.8 billion Joe Biden gave out to countries around the world in 2023. Let's just talk about AIPAC.
Arab countries in the Middle East taking in Palestinian refugees. The onset of a renewed war between Israel and Hamas has led to fears that millions of Palestinian people living in the Gaza Strip may be forced to become refugees.
And why won't other Arab countries take them? You would know. Surely it couldn't be because they don't know how to behave.
But despite the fact that Gaza shares a border with Egypt, the Egyptian government almost immediately ruled out any possibility of accepting Palestinian refugees. In fact, Egypt is currently constructing an even larger border wall with Gaza than the one it currently has in place.
Wait a second. Wait. Why? For all you bleeding hearts not talking about this on your YouTube channel? Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, and all of you that spread Gaza misinformation, why aren't you talking about the bigger Egyptian wall to keep Palestinians out of Egypt when they share religion and they share a heritage? Why?
Now, many outside observers have asked why Egypt, a majority Arab and Islamic nation, would turn away the Palestinian people. And of course, many have pointed out that it may serve the political interests of many Arab nations to refuse to accept Palestinian refugees because it allows them to then blame Israel for any sort of humanitarian crisis that unfolds. But the thing is, historically, many Arab nations have accepted Palestinian refugees. And
do you know what they did with them? They shipped their little butts right back. Right back. That's what they did. Uh-oh. What did I do? Oh, Lord have mercy. Hold on. Let me get rid of that. I don't know what I was doing. I'm learning. I'm fixing to be 51. I learned new techniques.
refugees. And that may be why Egypt doesn't want to now. For example, in 1991, the Kuwaiti government actually expelled nearly 300,000 Palestinians in the aftermath of the First Gulf War, and this represented an astonishing 18% of Kuwait's entire population. So what was the reason? Well, the Palestinian Liberation Organization had actually supported Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait a year earlier, and this support only grew after Iraq began attacking Israel with rockets throughout the war. After Kuwait's liberation, the government considered much of the Palestinian community to be complicit in the Iraqi occupation of their country, and in response, nearly all Palestinians were deported in just a few months. And this wasn't the...
So wait a second. They welcomed in these supposed refugees, and then when refugees got into a country that wasn't there, they welcomed in and helped an invading army come in and try to conquer the new country they were in. Oh, wow. Kind of sounds like America, right?
First time something like this had happened. Decades earlier, the Palestinian groups operating in Jordan had come to openly call for the overthrow of Jordan's monarchy in the aftermath of the Six-Day War. At the time, the PLO maintained its own separate army on Jordanian soil and used that armed force to sow chaos. Armed gangs of PLO militants drove around the capital of Amman, robbing families and businesses in the name of collecting financial assistance for the ongoing war of attrition against Israel. When members of the Jordanian police and army tried to defend their citizens from these attacks, they were attacked and killed. The Palestinian political network operated as a state within a state, with militants repeatedly using Jordan to launch rockets into Israel. The Marxist-Leninist Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine even went so far as to hijack multiple planes, diverting the flights to a...
Hold on. You guys heard that? The Marxist-Lenin. Huh. Okay. So when I said that people like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens are neoconservative, I was right. What is neoconservative, Sam? That is a Democrat, a liberal that becomes disillusioned with the Democrat Party, so they swap parties. But they never leave their political ideas behind. They bring them with them and they begin to try to mold the Republican Party into what they think it should be. So when you got Marjorie Taylor Greene and you've got all these people anti-Israel, anti-AIPAC, right? They're all leaning toward Marxism.
With militants repeatedly using Jordan to launch rockets into Israel. The Marxist-Leninist Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine even went so far as to hijack multiple planes, diverting the flights to a Palestinian-controlled airfield in Jordan, where the passengers were held hostage. By September 1970, the Jordanian army had finally had enough. A full-scale war with the PLO broke out, and after 10 months of fighting, the Palestinians were driven out of the country. Yet, as a parting gift, a Palestinian terrorist group known as Black September assassinated the Jordanian prime minister. Sadly, the story doesn't end there, because the PLO then moved into Lebanon, where they allied themselves with Marxist and socialist movements that were seeking to overthrow Lebanon's conservative Maronite Christian.
Okay, so Christians, are you listening? Or have you all turned me off and unsubscribed and are now crying in my comment section? When you start this free Gaza or poor Gaza, am I saying you cannot have compassion for children? No, it's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you had better learn the history of the people you're dealing with.
Government. The presence of thousands of Palestinian militants flooding into the country completely destabilized Lebanon and plunged the entire nation into chaos. Less than 4 years after the PLO was expelled from Jordan, Lebanon found itself in the middle of one of the most bloody and chaotic civil wars in Middle Eastern history, from which it has never fully recovered. In short, Palestinian organizations have not just attacked Israel. They have sowed unrest in many of the neighboring Arab and Muslim countries as well, and this has led those governments to the conclusion that allowing for mass immigration or even just refugee camp resettlement within their borders would lead to domestic unrest for their own countries. And this, of course, only exacerbates the humanitarian crisis for those Palestinian non-combatants caught in the middle. The problem is, as long as terrorist organizations like Hamas and others are elected to represent the Palestinian people, their plight will most likely continue, as neither Israel nor apparently the surrounding Arab nations want to see their own populations threatened by terrorist groups.
Wow. And I'm going to go one step further. I'm just going to say the truth. It's never going to stop. I showed y'all videos the other day where they raised these kids up in preschool. Throw rocks at the Jewish people, all Jewish people, till their faces are red like tomatoes. When you grow up, are you going to be a policeman like your uncle? You are. Good for you. Are you going to arrest bad people? Jewish people? You're going to shoot them? All of them? Good. Now you can say what you want. I, for one, don't want any of them here, even the children. Why, Sam? You're a Christian. How can you say that? Because our children have a right to grow up safe. They let an Egyptian man in, an illegal immigrant on a visa, and he threw gasoline in Colorado on old Jewish people and burned them alive this year. There was the military guy in New Orleans on New Year's Day flying, the Islamic flag they tried to cover up from the news that ran over people in New Orleans. And I spoke to an eyewitness, and she told me there was a woman lying on the ground and her legs were over her head. He folded her like that. And she was still alive, broken in half like that, and they couldn't help her. She eventually died on the concrete. These are the people you want in our country? Folks, it's time for you to wake up. There's actually good and evil in this world. And sometimes being good means I refuse to allow evil into the same sphere that I'm in. So no, I don't want to give an inch of land to any of the Palestinians. None of it. Those people have elected these people into power. They've allowed these people, Hamas and other crazies, to starve them. That is their fault. That is, they have more bullets than they have food. Whose fault is that? If you can get ammunition, you can get food. And I, for one, just not falling for the BS anymore. But it's a shame to see people that consider themselves Christians falling for it. And then siding and becoming anti-Israel. And you don't even know your Bible. The God you serve, if you're a Christian, is the Jewish God. And if you're Muslim, it's not. So please like, comment, subscribe if you'd like to row in our boat and help me continue to do this. YouTube does not pay me. Look in the top of comments. Other than that, I'll see the rest of you guys tonight at 8. God bless, folks.